Hi, and welcome to the 700 Club. It's being called a miracle. A series of bombs planted on Israeli buses did not take any lives or cause any injuries.
Meanwhile, Israelis are enduring another cruel shock from Hamas. Authorities discovered that one of the bodies returned Thursday is not the mother of the Bibas children or any other hostage. CBN's Julie Stahl reports on the turmoil in Israel.
Bombs exploded on 3 public buses Thursday evening in the central Israeli cities of Bat Yam and Holon. In what many believe was a miracle, the empty buses were parked and there were no injuries. The bombs had timers, and some suspect that they had been planned to go off during this morning's rush hour. Bomb disposal units discovered at least 2 other unexploded devices and other suspicious objects on public transport. Police are investigating it as a coordinated attack.
I can say that the situation is widespread. It's happening in multiple locations. We are spread out with emergency squads and with police officers in a great number of locations.
Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu ordered the IDF to carry out an intensive operation against terrorism centers in Judea and Samaria, where Israeli forces have been carrying out large-scale operations for months to uncover terrorist hubs. A Telegram channel claiming to represent Hamas in the Palestinian city of Tulkarem indicates it may have been responsible for the bombings. The message says, "The revenge of the martyrs will not be forgotten so long as the occupier is present in our land. This is a jihad of either victory or martyrdom." The explosions came at the end of a heart-wrenching day for the Israeli people. Earlier, Hamas returned 4 bodies, including 83-year-old peace activist Oded Lifshitz, 9-month-old Kavir Bibas, and his 4-year-old brother Ariel Bibas. The IDF said the children were brutally murdered in November 2023, a month after they were taken captive. This morning, Israelis woke up to yet another shock. The body that was supposed to be the boy's mother, Shiri Bibas, was not hers, nor that of any other hostage. President Isaac Herzog wrote on X, "This is a shocking and horrific violation of the ceasefire agreement, another cruel act by the terrorists of Hamas who continue to show utter disregard for humanity."
Today, the heavens shake. The entire civilized world should condemn these horrific murders. The entire civilized world should join Israel in demanding the immediate release of all the hostages. All of Israel is united in grief.
In an interview with CNN, Adam Boehler, U.S. envoy for hostage affairs, agreed it's a clear violation of the agreement and says Hamas needs to turn over the body quickly.
If I have one piece of advice for Hamas now, it's not only do you need to release her body immediately, but we have the bodies of 4 Americans that are still there, and we have 1 American, Don Alexander. He needs to come home. If I were them, I'd release everybody, or they're going to face total annihilation right now.
This weekend, Israel is due to receive the last 6 live Hamas hostages from the first phase of the agreement. Julie Stahl, CBN News, Jerusalem.
Thank you, Julie. CBN Middle East Bureau Chief Chris Mitchell is with us now from Jerusalem. Chris, what is the reaction? And the story is evolving so quickly. Bodies returned or not who we were anticipating. There's a missing body of Shiri Bibas. What's happening?
Well, Israelis over here right now, Andrew, they're horrified. They're reeling, feeling being deceived. They're emotionally traumatized. You know, there was expecting some measure of closure when the bodies were delivered yesterday, but it all seemed to be a charade, and it really opened the wound up again. People are calling it psychological terror and manipulation, and some just simply demonic and evil. A lot of people are having compassion for Yarden, the husband and the father. And here's more of what Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu had to say.
They languish in captivity until Hamas murdered them in cold blood. Who kidnaps a little boy and a baby and murders them? Monsters, that's who. These Hamas monsters also cynically refused to bring back the boy's mother, Shiri, and sent the body of a Gazan woman instead, in brazen violation of the agreement.
And Andrew, the forensic scientists concluded that the Bibas boys, Ariel and Kafir, they weren't killed with a weapon, but they were killed with bare hands. And Yarden the father told Hagari, the IDF spokesman, to let everyone know how cruel Hamas was to his sons.
It's barbaric. Is Israel ready to go back to war now? The hostage agreement seems broken by these details. Is this about to escalate even further now?
It really could, Andrew. It certainly is a huge violation to the agreement. And the IDF is poised and has been for several weeks now in and around Gaza to resume the war. But Israel would be at war now if it wasn't for the hostages. And so it's such a delicate tightrope that Netanyahu is walking. They say, both President Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu, they'll be held to pay. But when and how? How do you destroy Hamas without risking the lives of the hostages? We have 6 more coming out tomorrow that are alive. 59 remaining. About 35 of them have already been condemned. They've already been negotiated that they were dead or discovered they were dead. That's why it's so important, Andrew, to be praying for wisdom for the leaders of Israel and comfort for the peace of the people of Israel.
Chris, you know, one would think a lead today would have been the bus bombings that occurred, but we haven't even gotten to that yet. Tell us more about the response by the IDF to these bombings that occurred.
Well, the Defense Minister Katz, Andrew, is saying there's increased operation in Tulkarem. That's where maybe this terror attack came from. They want to destroy the terror infrastructure. And he says this is really the front lines of Iranian axis of evil. There's a massive anti-terror campaign going on for weeks. It's called Iron Wall in Palestinian cities in Judea and Samaria. But this averted a huge, unprecedented terrorist attack and really was a miracle, Andrew, that people weren't killed or injured because of these many bombs.
All right, Chris, thank you so much. Really appreciate being with us and your reporting. In other news, much of this country is in a deep freeze after a major winter snowstorm. Ephraim Graham has that story and more from our CBN newsroom. Ephraim.
Andrew, polar air continues to bring frigid temperatures from the Midwest to the East Coast. More areas seeing temperatures 15 to 30 degrees below average. This after the major storm that covered the Midwest and Mid-Atlantic, burying Virginia Beach in 13 inches of snow. In Detroit, an entire neighborhood is blanketed in ice after a water main break. Kentucky is still recovering from deadly floods, with water rescues continuing. As to those temperatures, forecasters say the Arctic blast is set to clear out with a big upswing this weekend. Turning overseas now, Vice President J.D. Vance's address to NATO allies last week highlighted a growing gap between the United States and Europe. Vance scolded the leaders for trampling on free speech as well as ignoring voters who are turning to right-wing parties in growing numbers. Ardell Hurd is on this story.
It was clear from Vice President J.D. Vance's speech to NATO allies in Munich last week that at least politically, Western Europe and the United States under Donald Trump are moving away from each other. Vance took leaders to task over the rampant state-supported censorship in many European nations.
The threat that I worry the most about vis-a-vis Europe is not Russia, it's not China, it's not any other external actor. And what I worry about is the threat from within. The retreat of Europe from some of its most fundamental values.
And while Vance simply defended free speech, at least some of the liberal European elites in his audience saw him as giving aid and comfort to their political enemies on the European right. Those parties are becoming a major force. In Germany Sunday, the right-wing AfD, Alternative for Germany, is expected to finish second in national elections. Their rise has been fueled by an economic crisis and a disastrous open borders policy, which led to last week's Munich car attack by a 24-year-old Afghan asylum seeker, killing a mother and her 2-year-old daughter while injuring at least 37. Regardless of how well AfD does, Germany's other parties have vowed to keep it out of any coalition government. This after Romania annulled its presidential election in December when a right-wing candidate won. Vance addressed the issue of European elites trying to keep right-wing parties out of power.
We shouldn't be afraid of our people even when they express views that disagree with their leadership. If you're running in fear of your own voters, there is nothing America can do for you.
A seismic political shift to the right was already underway in many Western democracies. Now, with the election of Donald Trump, the movement has become even more energized. What one European leader calls the Trump tornado has struck Europe.
They've been shaken up by the election of Trump. They really feel that, they're next.
Frank Ferretti is executive director of the think tank MCC Brussels.
I think there is a growing sense that the old mainstream parties have lost the trust and the connection with the public.
Many British and Europeans feel they have become poorer and less free. Eurozone growth has stagnated under climate change regulations from Brussels, and the average EU nation would now qualify as one of the poorest states in the U.S. Germany, once among the world's strongest economies, is now deindustrializing to meet radical green energy goals, what the Wall Street Journal calls the world's dumbest energy policy. German economist and journalist Sabine Beppler-Spall says Germans see their falling standard of living and want a leader who will do something about it.
There is a very strong mood within a large sector of German population for very fundamental changes, for real changes.
If Trump's term is successful and Europe falls even farther behind the U.S. economically, it will only put more pressure on European elites trying to keep right-wing parties out of power. Dale Hurd, CBN News.